Now it says live. Yep.
Now it says live. Yeah. Well, you can't trust me with technology. Everybody should know that.
Yeah. Oh, we got you. We got it set up. All right. So
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah. But let's give it a minute or two so people get a chance to find their way in here.
Yeah. And just while we're waiting, we were talking in this class. I was showing them some of the topics of the "What Would You Do" videos, and it made me think of how we can, even readdress some of those things like over time and whatnot. Some of the guys, they really appreciated that and those topics. And so I was thinking to myself, like, we can almost redo them again and talk about them again in a different way, because that was kind of the main learning point that we talked about was, even though we're discussing what you could do, there's always more than one way, to do things. Right. So, yeah.
Well, I was at a kind of like a get together with 4 or 5 people that used to be in EP that has moved on and became CSOs or head of security for private family offices and whatever. And we actually talked about them. And all 4 people at this dinner I was with on Monday brought up different things from what would you do and pulled them up. And we actually had a discussion with some of these things. And the best thing that has happened in a long time was that some of the things you and I gave as a solution, they didn't agree on. So we actually had a debate back and forth of how you could have done it or not done it and whatever. And that actually, for me, made it even more perfect, right? Because the whole idea with what would you do when you started was that, hey, this is how we see it. But if you have another way, go with that, right? But so that was great. But we should definitely do that. And on that note, for everybody that's in here, before we start, I don't know if you're watching this on our StreamYard platform or on our YouTube channel. If you're watching it on the YouTube channel, I'm going to do what everybody else does on YouTube. And I know it's kind of like cumbersome, but please like and subscribe, because the more likes and subscribes we get, the better position we get on YouTube. And that way, the more people can see our channel and see the What Would You Do videos. So let's remind each other.
You guys will be able to see them, when we post them. If you like and subscribe, you're going to get notified of it and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So you'll be able to see it. Yeah.
So do that. Should we give it another minute and then get started, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think since we're recording and we're going to push it out later, let's just get rolling.
All right. Let me just do something here. All right. Boom. All right. So for everybody that's here now, what we're talking about today is communication, and especially communications in large crowds and in loud environments, right? And I'm pretty sure that anybody who has been an EP for a certain amount of time have experienced some kind of communication failure, right? And anybody who has been to a large event has probably noticed that it's very hard to get a phone connection. It looks like you have full signal, but you can't call anybody. Your phone stands there and it kind of like rotates. You can't get your emails. Sometimes you can get a text out, but you can't always get a text back. So I'm pretty sure everybody has had some kind of communication issue. What we're talking about here.
Yeah, we were talking about it actually just now when we were talking about like the radios and things like that. When you have an event like this, like Christian's talking about, guys, you're going to get that jammed up feeling. It's like the classic thing is like New Year's Eve. You're trying to send a text New Year's Eve and it's taking forever to go through. That's simply because all the systems are bogged down, everything else, but also because of there's complexities with comms because of how loud it is and all of that. So those are the issues that we need to work through. But what I'm saying is those shouldn't surprise you. So like you're going to the Super Bowl, like, are you surprised that there's tens of thousands of people there? No. So like you need to just kind of think ahead on this and be aware that these issues exist. So that's kind of where we're at, is like, be aware when you're going to this kinds of events and make some plans ahead of time. And, Christian's got some good tools for you here to think about using.
No, and what I did before we did this seminar was I actually went backwards and looked at some of our mission debriefs and looked at stuff from some of the large events, and some of the stuff I took from the presidential inauguration. I took some of the issues we had at Super Bowl, Coachella, Stagecoach, same venue, but a little bit of a different problem. I took some from EDC, which were here in Vegas last weekend, and from Burning Man. And out of all these events, the smallest one has about 100,000 participants, and the largest one, I don't even know how many people were in DC for the inaugurations and stuff like that. But something where I could find the statistics is Coachella and EDC, who usually have around 250,000 people each day in a very congested area. So no matter how much they kind of like strengthen the phone signal and stuff like that by putting up all these hotspots and whatever, it's always jammed up. So what we're talking about here is our experiences from some of these events, and then general experiences we've had with big and large crowds. So if we get started, one of the first things that I kind of want to go through is what do we normally carry with us, right? And if we're totally honest, I think everybody agrees that our primary means of communication is our cell phones. Our cell phones is kind of like bread and butter of what we do, and 99% of the time they do the job fine, right? We can use them for calling, and more importantly, we can use them to text because we're around the clients. So we use those a lot. Another thing that we really have gotten found of using, and I don't know if I have the right word or name for them here, Joe. I call them push-to-talk phones.
It's the push-to-talk over cellular is the correct term. Push-to-talk over cellular, POC. But yeah, it's the radios that work like Nextel, right? That's what you mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we, of course, use radios. Oh, let me go back one here, if I can figure that out. Of course, we use radios. I don't know how to go back, but it doesn't matter.
We use our computer. Hit the back arrow on your computer. That might work.
Yeah, see, now I've got one more in there. I don't even know how to do that. Oh, man, I'm the worst at this stuff here. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, anyway, we'll keep playing with that. But yeah, the what Christian was getting at was the push-to-talk over cellular radios now that are becoming more and more common. Whether you use, there's a bunch of different brands, whether you get the Motorola Waves or Hear Clear, radios or something like that you have where they have the cell phone service.
Yeah.
We'll get into the details of it, but they work actually differently than your phone, being that it's over the same system, but they use different technologies. Some of them even still use like 2G, 3G, things like that. So they will actually work when the 4G and the LTE and the 5G and all that is just flooded. The push-to-talk radios will still work. So that's why we're breaking them down as something different.
Yeah. And then the other thing that both Joe and I have used for years and are very, we can't speak highly enough about it, is the whole satellite to texting. Mm-hmm. It's a little slow sometimes, but we'll get into that. And then there's the new thing, which are these complete offline communicators, which is the system that we use is called Totem Compass, and I think they're the first out there. But there's a bunch of them that is coming out now that works on either Mestastic or all these offline systems. And I gotta say, I'm so impressed with them, but we'll talk about them when we get to them. And then the last thing I have in here is one thing that I think every EP team always forget about, and that's hand signs and signals, right? And I don't know if we're going to get to it in this presentation, but you can almost do a presentation about it completely, right? Because a lot of times we can see each other and we try to call each other, we try to text each other, we try to get on the radio. But why don't you have like a piece of paper or a little laminated sign or whatever that means 2 could means go to exit 2. The fist could be close in, whatever you think about, right? And as long as you can see each other, those work no matter what happens. But for some reason, we always tend to forget about them. So I think it's kind of an important thing. But anyway.
Yeah, no. And what it makes me think of too is me and a guy, we were working an entertainer. We were overseas and we were working a entertainer, and we were standing where we were on camera, and we couldn't push to talk and be Secret Service it to our wrists or anything. So we ended up finding ways to like rub our nose or rub our ear and things like that's how we actually were kind of communicating in the moment, So it was pretty, those little things actually work.
No, they do. And we all carry our flashlights, right? I mean, two blink with your flashlight could mean something. one quick blink or whatever, and we use them all the time to get each other's attention, but we don't use them for anything else, right? And I always tell people, like, each detail should sit down and make 5 or 10 simple commands, laminate them on a piece of paper. It's just like Morse code, right? I mean, we don't really do any of that, and it's as low tech as it gets, but we can all do it.
Yeah, like Jason said there's a plenty of military hand signals that you can just look up and adapt. There's a good chance that somebody might know from the military what some hand arm signals. So that's a really good comment.
And the only hand signal that's universal that everybody uses is, of course, the middle finger, right? All right. So back to the program. Some of the challenges that we have when we go to big crowds, and remember, big crowds are different for everybody. What we're talking about here is typically 100,000 people and up. But the big challenges that we typically have is what we talked about, that there's either bad GSM signal or good signal, but not enough bandwidth for the phones to work. And that results in us not being able to really call anybody. It results in slow or no texting. And the worst thing when you're out that can really mess with us on details is that you think you send a text, but it might not have left the servers or the phone system. So maybe you're texting your driver, say, pull up, we're coming out. But the text never left your phone, and you never got a response back from the driver. So you're kind of like taking a chance, right? The other thing,
on that point, Christian, real quick, one of the benefits, and I really like that WhatsApp does this. Mm-hmm. If you ever pay attention to the check marks next to your messages on WhatsApp, that's what they are. One check means it left your phone and it hit the server. The second check mark means it left the server and it hit their phone. It was delivered. And then when they turn blue, it means that the message was read. So those little check marks are actually very important in a situation like this, where if the message actually left your phone. iMessage, for instance, will only tell you if it was delivered, but you have no idea if it, like Christian's saying, if it even left your phone until then.
No, and I mean, if you guys can check, how many times have you texted somebody and you leave a building or a parking garage or whatever, and all of a sudden it comes back on your phone, but it took 5 minutes or whatever, right? That's it, in essence, the same thing that happens, right? And the problem with texting is that it's great because it's easy. And if you have preset texts and all of that, it's fast and you can still relatively pay attention. But if it doesn't go out and they don't kind of like make sure that they confirm that they got it, it can be hard. The other thing that we also have a lot of issues with all the time is our headsets, and what people tend to forget are microphones, right? Because we all in the old days were brought up with the pigtail and the clear thing that goes up to your ear. But not a lot of people, for instance, buy the yellow foam earpieces, and you can actually change the end of that pigtail. So if you look at here on the camera, it's this dingy here. Yeah. I don't have one of the foamy ones, but you can take these off and take pretty much the same as the orange foam earplugs that we have. But this little thing here goes through, and you can hear a little bit better if you still use these systems, right? So there's a lot of challenges with headsets, and people tend to forget that there's just as many. Some of the times when you can't hear people, it's not always the earpiece. It can also be the microphone. It can be a bad microphone. It can be a microphone we don't know how to use, and then we try to cover it up with our hand and hold it in here, and sometimes that makes it even worse. So headsets and microphones is definitely a problem. And then the other thing that's a problem is that we never know how loud things are going to get, right? We don't know how rowdy it's going to get or whatever. So it can be really, really hard to plan doing your advance and stuff like that. So loud crowd noise is a big thing. And of course, music and performances. And then the last thing is what you mentioned a minute ago, Joe, is a lot of times you also need to blend in, right? So there's a lot of challenges when we go to big events.
Yeah, a little pro tip for you guys too. A little pro tip is the Surefire XP earplugs. If they're the version that you can hear through, so the version that has the hole going through them, and it has the little plastic cap at the end, you can actually pull out that plastic cap, and then you can take your acoustic tube, the terminal end of your acoustic tube, and plug it into it. Don't do it when it's in your ear; it'll hurt. But do it when it's out. And now you take that Surefire XP earplug, which are actually super comfortable. and you can use that and you can hear through it, and it stays in really well. So
it does. Just make sure you get the right size.
Yeah, sure.
And we're going to get to that a little bit, because a lot of people think that earpieces are earpieces, but there's a science to it. One of the things that we kind of going to talk about here now is what is the best way to use your technology, and how can we get the most out of it. And this is one of the things where if we were here in a live class and we had an audience here, we could talk about this probably a million times. I wrote down some of the things that we had in our debriefs that fits for the different things, right? One of the things is when you go to an event like this and you bring your regular phone, you'll notice that your battery drains way faster, right? Because it constantly have to search and update and whatever. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people bring extra batteries. I also tell people if you carry two phones, make sure to get them on two different providers, because sometimes AT&T can get a signal, sometimes T-Mobile can get a signal. But if you have two phones on the same provider, it doesn't really do you much good. Well, of course, it's great to have a backup phone, but if you can get it with two different providers, you have a bigger chance of getting a signal out. And then this last thing I want to talk a little bit about, I learned from Joe, and that is the whole thing of had set up text messages that you can send out and have a way to be faster with that whole thing. Because the shorter the text messages are, the bigger chance there is to get them out to people. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing with that is also just keeping it simple and not texting too much. Like actually, the time it takes to write a text message. You know what I mean? So especially if you text things all the time, keeping it short, keeping it brief. Now, you definitely don't want to send any type of media over something at that time when you're really busy. You take a picture and try to send that, especially if you have your phone settings to where it takes a really good picture. I mean, it's not going to work. So keep the text short, both for a lot of reasons. But yeah, the preset short messages are just the easiest, quickest way to do it.
Yeah. And the thing Joe just said about not sending media or taking pictures, that can actually block your phone and a lot of the airways, and it can be hard to get it out once you've done it. So stay away from that completely. It's fine to take pictures, but save them on the phone if you have somebody that's suspicious or whatever. Anyway. The other thing that can be a good tool is, like we talked about, the push-to-talk phones or whatever name we give them. For me, they have a little bit of a challenge because the sound in the communication can be very digitalized. I feel like it's a little bit better if I have a headset in than just listening to the actual speaker. But again, it's a question about how to use them. This weekend, for instance, when we were at EDC, where you can call nobody and you can text nobody, my drivers could understand what I was saying, but it was very hard for me to understand what they said. So the way that I do it is I give the command or the message that I need to give, and they just answer confirmative or Roger or got it or whatever, not trying to overcomplicate it.
Confirmative?
Well, I'm European. It's not confirmative?
Confirm sorry. Or affirmative. No, that was good. I like that.
Oh man, yeah. Sorry. You would think after 15 years you could speak real English, right? But nope. Yeah. Nope. But in general, they're really, really good for short communication, and they're really good to have as backup for your regular phones. And what I like about them the best is what Joe said. Since they're pretty old school, they seem to get a better signal faster, and they're really small. Right. So you know how it is. You go to these large events and you have your equipment. You're wearing what you're wearing. Maybe you can bring a fanny pack or a backpack or whatever, but you need to bring your med kit. You need to bring all this equipment. And eventually the client maybe ask you to hold their jackets, or if you can bring an umbrella for them or whatever. Right. So size matters when we go to these large events. And there's actually something I wanted to remind everybody here that hasn't worked overseas, and especially in a lot of, I guess, can you still say third world countries? What we've had in a lot of our debriefs of people who have worked large events is if you walk the crowd, there's a good chance of you getting pickpocketed. So make sure in these loud events as a security guy to close up your pockets and keep them in closed-in fanny packs or on your chest or wherever, right? Because there's nothing worse than having your phone or your radio or whatever stolen off your body. So that's a thing to remember. You got anything on this, Joe?
Yeah, I think that the other benefit to POC radios is the battery life and the fact that they are USB-C recharging because they're just new. The USB-C recharging is a huge benefit because you don't have to carry around an extra charger. You can actually even charge it while you're wearing it by a battery pack or something. It's pretty awesome. But they also use about a sixth on average. They use about a sixth of the power of normal radios, so they actually last a lot longer. So I mean, there's a lot of benefits to them. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And who would have known, right? Because it reminds me of the old Nextels that we threw away, 10, 20 years ago or whatever. But it's a great system. It's a great system. Then I want to talk a little bit about radios. And I don't know what it is with radios, but it's kind of the thing that'll never go away, I feel like. Or it's the thing that we have tried to get rid of for some reason so many times. And it's still, to my opinion, come back to being probably the best communication tool that we have. But still, a lot of people try not to use them or they don't want to use them. But some of the things that I want to talk about for radios and radios by... What the hell happened here?
Oh, those big old fingers.
Probably. Let's see here.
There you go.
Are we good?
Yeah, just click through it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, Joe, I shouldn't be allowed to really touch technology.
Confirmative.
I got it. No worries. No worries. Are we good?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we talk about radios, there's a couple of things, right? The first thing is get good quality radios or get really cheap quality radios. If you travel overseas, you can potentially throw away or leave behind. One out of the two. But since we're talking about big events here and mostly in the US, good quality radios, it starts there. Then the next thing that you've got to be sure, if you rely on radios as your main mean of communication, make sure that you can bring them, right? Because a lot of times when you have to get into these big events, you go and do the advance. You don't go through the normal access control because you either have a way in or you get there before or whatever. Not everybody lets you bring radios in if they don't know what they're talking about. And if you have like an expedited VIP through the main entrance, they might bark at your radio. So make sure you use radios that you're allowed to have and you're allowed to use also, right? Because sometimes there are restrictions on channels and is it your channel? Is it GMRS radios? Is it PMR radios? Is it your own channel? All that stuff. And then the other thing is a lot of times we're not on a repeater. And I've seen a lot of people do advanced work, but it's fairly rare that I see anybody test their radios on advances. And if it doesn't work on your advance, it definitely won't work when the event is fully loaded and there's 100, 200, 300,000 people amongst each other. So test the range, right? Another thing is, of course, headsets. And headsets is kind of like the good and evil as well, right? Because we all want cool headsets. And once we bought them, we think one source or one tool fix everything. And that is so not true. There's so many different kind of headsets, but there's one thing everybody should always have as a rule of thumb. And I don't know what you think about this, Joe, but everybody should have the same headset because that makes understanding the other people so much easier.
Right, I think just consistency, in general is good. Yeah, across the team. Yeah.
And then the other thing that people sometimes tend to forget is that there's so many different kind of headsets, right? And I know Joe and I, we find ourselves having, I don't know how many you have, but I probably have 10 different headset setups for different events, right? But one of the things that works really well for the large crowd and events and all that is these earpieces that are molded, especially for your ear. They go and take a cast of it and then they build the earpiece. And that means that they kind of block out extra sound. And if you look at people that perform on stages for concerts and whatever, they've started to use kind of the same system, just in a professional version for monitors, so they can hear the technicians, they can hear each other, they can hear the music, they can hear how they're singing, right? And in reality, it's all the same. And before this webinar here, I actually called one of my buddies who had toured pretty much his whole adult life and worked with some of the biggest bands and stuff like that. And they are actually using these customized stage monitors that you put in your ears, and they're able to hear everything, right? And it's such a typical EP thing that I kind of want to highlight here, because in all these years, myself being guilty, I looked at headsets for security, then I looked at headsets for police, and then for military. I never thought going to a PA store or people who sell big audio equipment or whatever and say, hey, what do you guys use at these concert halls? And when you go in and research this, you can get these for the same price of what we pay, up to thousands of dollars, but it's professional monitors that can hear what we're saying. And the best thing is, I even figured out that the plugs are the same as it is for our radios, right? So I learned a lot doing this, and it's kind of those things that we always kind of forget. The other thing that I think a lot of people don't think about with their headsets is remember to maintain them. Clean them out and make sure they're not full of wax, or the cables ain't half broken, the plugs are still good, and stuff like that, because else you start up on a bad start, right? There's nothing worse than seeing an EP team and they have one of those what do I call those, pigtails here, and they're supposed to be see-through, but they're not, because you used them for so long and so many years. I mean, these are what, $14 or something. So change them out once in a while and make sure they connect the right way and they're all the way on, right? Because if you don't do that, you can definitely not hear anything, right? So there's a lot we can do that we sometimes tend to forget. We're pretty happy with our in-ear, like headsets. But again, there's even better ones out there if you want to go and do it. And there's a lot of different ones, right? Another thing that I learned from our buddies over in the touring and musical security and all that, a lot of them split up the headset and the microphones. Because what we do is we typically have the hand mic that came with the 2-wire or whatever we have for our security headsets, and then we try to speak into that. But of course, there are people that have figured out how to make better microphones, right? And since there's 2 plugs into your radio, you can separate that and say, all right, this is just for sound, and the microphone just have to have this plug, and it still works, right? So it's definitely something to look into for all of us. You got anything to add to this one, Joe?
No, I mean, that's all good stuff. So no, it's all good stuff. Yeah, good.
Thank you, sir. The other thing is this thing that both Joe and I have always been praising, and you guys have probably heard us talk about it before. This one here is a Garmin, but there's other brands out there that do it. And what it is pretty much a small little satellite communicator that you can either use preset text that you set up, or you can use your phone with an app that then Bluetooth into this. This is called the inReach Mini 2. But like I said, there are different systems that do it. But what's really cool about this one is that I haven't found a place outdoors where it didn't work. And it goes up to a satellite, and you can text anybody. And if they use the same number, they can text you back. They don't necessarily need to have another one. That's
they don't need an app at all. That's the huge difference between the Garmin system and some of the others. But then there's most of the other systems are only app to app. That you have to have the app to text back, and that's a big limitation.
Yeah, and what's cool is you can text anybody on these, and they receive it, and you can see when they received it, and everything is good. It's a little slow because they have to update. So if it's an emergency text and you need to have instant response, don't use this, because it can take, what is it, they update every 2 minutes, or I don't even know. Can you set that, Joe, how often they update?
No, I don't think so, but it does take typically to receive the message on the other side, it takes about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I would say at minimum 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. But they have another function that I think a lot of people don't know in EP, and that is like when you go to an advance, let's say you advance let's use EDC here as an example, and that's this electronic dance festival out here in Vegas, and about 250,000 people, and it's out on the big speedway outside of town. When you go to do your advance, you typically figure out, how do I get in? Where do my principal go? Where is the VIP area? Where is the paramedics? And how do I get out of here? What happens when somebody says, hey, I want to go to one of the other stages. I want to go over and meet this performer that I know who now is playing in this little stage down in the back, or I want to see this act. It's hard, right? Because advancing whole of EDC will probably take a whole day, and we typically don't have time for that. Right. So what's cool about these systems is if you do your advanced work, you can put in waypoints. So you can also use it for navigation. So you can both text and navigate, which a lot of people tend to forget when we're at these large events. And that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. And like anything else, this I put in the picture here is actually from the event Burning Man, where you go to a desert and there's no real maps, there's no infrastructure, there's no grid, there's no nothing. And then you turn your Garmin on to try and make your own waypoints, and you figure out that somebody has actually already done this for you and uploaded the maps to the app, right? So all of a sudden you have a full mapping system, and you can do all of these things and text at the same time in a place that has no cell service, no infrastructure, whatever. So anybody, in my opinion, should have this in their toolbox. Agree?
Yep. And the cool thing that you mentioned real quick was the preset text messages. So you can preset them, and those are free. So what's cool about that is you can have it on the minimal. If you're just using it for updates, like to tell everybody you're good and where you are, because when you send a text, you can set it to send your position as well, like mine is. So I can actually turn on my inReach. I hit menu messages, and then the preset messages come up, and I just hit that message and hit send. It's preset of what you want to say, who you want to send it to, but those are free. So you don't pay for those. So you can send those as many as you want for the minimal, just to keep your account open, and those are free. So that's kind of a benefit, is you can use it as a check-in system. And then if you absolutely need to, then who cares how much it costs? You use it for what you need, but it's still a nominal amount. So yeah, big fan of the Garmin's.
I need to go back here again. Sorry about that. Yeah. I'm not a super user in this. Hold on one second, because I really want to show this thing here that's, in my opinion, pretty revolutionizing. We just been playing with these things, and it's actually not a security product at all. It's made for people who go to large festivals, and it works off the grid. And all you do is you have these units, and they kind of work like a compass, if you guys can imagine. So this one here is programmed to me in my phone, and the other ones are then programmed to be connected. And what's really cool is you can connect up to 10 units. So let's say I'm here with this one. Joe needs to, I'm with the principal. The principal says, hey, Joe, can you take my daughter over to see this band over there somewhere? Okay. Joe breaks off from our protective bubble, goes over to find this other band that's playing with the daughter. The principal looks at me 10 minutes later and go, oh, this music sucks. Let's go over to my daughter and Joe and see what's going on over there. I can get on my radio, I can get on my phone, I can get Joe to explain where he is, or I can press this one, and this one at Joe's will then show me in which direction to walk. I don't know if you guys can see it here, but they kind of have these pointy things, right, on the diamond. That shows the direction to where Joe's receiver is, or his transmitter. So when I walk around, I know I go straight, left, straight, and there he is. It doesn't require anything else than that. And up to 10 of them can find each other, or they can all be linked to one unit, which is, in my opinion, awesome, especially because they can be used off the grid. They say up to 5 miles radius. I haven't tried that yet, but I saw on a chat forum about these that at EDC, where I worked this last weekend, there was about 25,000 units out there, which meant that they could easily cover the whole area because they have that mesh function. The more people that use them, the longer range you get. And then when I kind of set them up, I realized that they are starting to make preset maps for all the major venues around the world. So far, they have it for Coachella over here. They have it for EDC. They have it for the big festivals in Europe. And every week, they're updating the app with more and more maps. And then I found this feature that's even better, because if we don't get to advance the whole thing, they have this thing where you can go in on the app. If you have your phone, you download the map, so it's offline on your phone, and then you go in and you find a spot. So if you guys can imagine here on this map where you see all these dots, if I pick let's say this dot right up here, that's and say, let's say for instance that that's backstage at some other stage, you can pull it up and say totem me here, and then your totem gets this waypoint automatically into this little hockey puck or whatever we call them. And then you have a wayfinding device right over there. And then they have one button on the back where you can send a message to each other. It doesn't do anything, but it comes up and shakes a little bit. So you just decide what that means. Does that mean, hey, come to me, I'm coming to you, or whatever, if I activate it? And I see a huge use for these in EP, especially because we're always there to protect the boss. But what about all the other people that are on their own, or we break off to protect or whatever? Give them one of these. This set of 3 here, I believe, is like $200 or whatever. And I know this is definitely staying in my toolbox for a foreseeable future. Have you used these yet, Joe?
No, I haven't. But I mean, I don't do those kinds of events for the most part. So I think that that's where it would be very beneficial, especially if you got like a family or something, like a bunch of kids going out and going all over the place. Like that might be interesting, so I could see the use of it for sure.
I can also see them for travel, for instance, when you go to big cities or whatever, right? And somebody don't want to wait for the boss. They want to go out and buy some local stuff or whatever. You can give them one of them and they can find their way back if they stay within a mile or two, right? So, I think like anything in EP, the more creative you are with use of tools, the better it can be. And as you can hear, I'm pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. But then one thing that I kind of remembered when I sat and made this whole presentation for these tools is what it all comes down to. Like anything else in EP, it comes down to doing our advanced work, right? And remember, when you go out and do advanced work, advanced for communication. If you go there in the advance and you realize that, hey, there's a very low phone signal here, there's only 1 bar or 2 bars. Well, when 100,000 people shows up, there's a big chance that won't work. When you go there, bring your radios. Can they actually transmit from inside the building out to your drivers, or is it so concreted that they won't work? Ask around, how loud is it going to get in here? Do we need to set up waypoints? Do we need to make special signs? What can we wear? Can we bring our radios? Can't we bring our radios, right? So you should make a full advanced communication plan for any major events you go to. That's kind of what I want to get to with this last slide. And once you make that, you should, of course, have a backup and a backup of a backup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was kind of the last slide I had here, Joe. Do you have anything you want to add before we take questions?
No, just re-stress that. That's just the biggest thing is like this stuff, it shouldn't surprise you. It's like we're going to a big event. What happens at big events? Communication suffers. So find a solution for it. If it's going to be loud, if it's going to be crowded, if it's going to be loud and crowded, whatever it is, like, just find solutions for it. They're out there. So helpful recommendations here. I've been looking at getting this. They even have a 10% off code right now on the Totem Compass. So I'm looking at that. I've never like actually played with them, but that's the big thing is like knowing what'll work ahead of time. So I like tinkering with things, so I'll probably buy them. But overall, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hashtag confirmative.
Thanks, Joe. Have you looked through the questions? If there's anybody that have any questions?
Yeah, I've been tracking them. So there's some good comments. I mean, the stuff about the different comms and the different apps. Like Zello's a great app. There's other Zello. There's a lot of things like that you can use. I mentioned the Hear Clear radios before. They actually have an app that talks to their radios. So you have the app that talks to the radios, all kinds of things. I mean, they work really well. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. See what everyone's using and see what you can see what works, what fits your budget, and what all works.
Yeah,
Steve. So there's a bunch of different brands out there. I can't really say what I recommend unless I know what you're doing, what level you're at, what budget you're at. But check out, for POC radios, there's a bunch of resellers out there now. So like the Rapid Radios, the POC Links, there's a bunch of these resellers out there. I'd stay away from these off, brands and whatnot. I saw Chet commenting on here from Hear Clear. So reach out to him and see what he can do for you. Chet Ettinger. Talk to him. There's Motorola Wave. There's a few others, but it just depends on, like I said, what kind of radios you want, what kind of if you got some cash, then I would talk to Chet. And if it's government, you might want to see what you have to buy. Obviously, you might know that, but talk to Chet and see what he can do for you.
Yeah. And again, if you enjoy any of this stuff here, I don't know where you're watching it, but we're really trying to get our YouTube channel up and running. So if you watch it via YouTube or you watch any of our live streams or whatever on YouTube, you would do us a huge favor if you like and subscribe. And on these live streams here, Joe and I tries to do one a month. Sometimes we're too busy, but we try to get them out once a month. And if anybody have any suggestions, either for what would you do videos or things that we should do a potential webinar about, feel free to reach out. You can find us on social media. You can find us, of course, on LinkedIn and everywhere else. And I'm sure most people by now have our email addresses in one form or another. Don't be a stranger. And nothing is too small and nothing is too big. We would love to get some inputs. All right.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
See you.